Good morning, good afternoon, good evening everyone, and welcome to lesson 4 of the Thinking into Results program, The Secret Genie, Unlocking the Genie. This is one of my favorite lessons. My name, as you know, is Emma Moncelier, a certified consultant for the Proctor Gallagher Institute, led by the legendary Bob Proctor and his brilliant business partner, Sandy Gallagher, the creators of the fabulous program that is Thinking into Results. Thank you for joining us on this call. It's so nice to have so many of you, as always, from around the globe. But because there are so many of you here today, I would like to leave it till questions at the end of the call if we can. There's a lot of wonderful material that I need to get through with all of you first. Now, many of you I know have already watched the video, but for those of you that haven't watched the Lesson 4 video with Bob Proctor, I would encourage you to do so straight after this call so that you can understand the material. It's very important that you understand the lesson or the comment that Bob makes when he says we think in pictures. What do we mean by this? Well, in this lesson, lesson 4, we take a deeper dive into the workings of the mind and begin to question what the mind actually looks like. So you are probably wondering what the mind has to do with the secret genie and how this lesson helps and fits into the Thinking into Results program. Well, pay close attention because I'm going to teach you now some very important information. To begin, I want you to open your mind to the theory of thinking in pictures. You might be wondering what both Bob Proctor and I mean when we say we think in pictures. Well, up until the Thinking into Results program, I personally had never really paid attention to this theory either, but it is so true. As human beings, we have the ability to visualize and depict an image at random and immediately. Here's an example. What do you see when I ask you to think of a piece of fruit, for example, say a banana or an apple? What do you see? You'll no doubt immediately get a picture in your mind of that piece of fruit, whether it's a banana or an apple. Now, we may not all exactly have the same image. Some of you may see a ripe banana. Some of you may see a red or a green apple, large or small. But either way, you are going to visualize that piece of fruit immediately. So when we say we think in pictures, what do we mean? Well, when you think of a word, our brain cells are triggered instantaneously to cause an image to flash on the screen of your mind. So I like to think of the mind as a great big movie screen. But what if I ask you, what does the mind actually look like? Well, I reckon that if you are asked to picture your mind, you will instinctively picture the brain. I know I did when I was first asked this question. Yet the mind isn't actually the brain any more than our hands or our feet. It's another internal organ. But think of this organ, the brain, as being the electronic switching station which activates all the cells in our body. But the brain is not actually the mind. You see, our mind is an intangible object. It cannot be seen, it cannot be touched, it cannot be photographed. So no one really knows what the mind actually looks like. And because we think in pictures, this causes a confusion for us because we automatically picture the brain, and yet the brain isn't the mind. So Dr. Thurman Fleet, back in 1934, addressed this very conundrum. And so lesson 4 of Thinking into Results introduces us to the theory and the concept that Dr. Thurman Fleet introduced. And he created an illustration of the stick person, which we affectionately know in the Thinking into Results program as the secret genie. So the secret genie is the stick person. And the purpose of the stick person illustration is to provide us, you and me, with an image of the mind to show us in simple terms how the mind operates on two different levels. Bear with me one moment because I'm going to bring you a picture up in a moment. Now, Bob Proctor was introduced to the stick person by one of his great mentors, Leland van Vendelwall, back in 1970s. He was introduced, or he came across this illustration by Dr. Thurman Fleet. And it was Dr. Fleet's philosophy that to treat a person's illness, that person needed to be treated holistically, as a whole, the body and the mind. He felt, Dr. Fleet, that it wasn't sufficient just to treat the symptoms of an illness. You needed to actually treat the cause. And so before he could treat the mind, Dr. Fleet wanted to have a depiction to work with, and that's the stick person. With me so far, I appreciate it's a little bit confusing, but I'm going to draw you a diagram at the moment, in a moment, showing you exactly what the stick person looks like. Now, bear with me because some of you may or may not have seen this stick person before, this little illustration. So, I'm warning you now, some of you might find it a little bit silly, and I must admit when I first saw the stick person illustration, I was like, how is this going to help me? But believe me, it is so powerful, and it's such a wonderful little tool to help you understand the workings of the mind. Now, I'm not too sure if you can actually see here. I'm going to try and make it as big as I can. We have a large circle connected to a slightly smaller circle, two little legs, two little arms, and in here, in the top circle, I'm going to put a line, okay? So the large circle actually represents the mind, and the smaller circle here represents the body. Now you can see his little arms and legs, so that gives our stick person, in this case he's a man, so you can see his little arms and legs, which gives him a bit of realism. And he's also going to have 5 little antennae there, coming out of his head, the 5 little hairs I like to call them. I'm going to save those 5 little antennae, those little hairs, for the next point. Now you see how this larger circle here, which we say represents the mind, and the smaller circle represents the body. Now the mind, we've divided it here exactly in the middle with a horizontal line. We've divided the mind into 2 parts, okay? The top part here is known as the conscious mind. The lower level, the lower part, is known as the subconscious mind. Okay? Now the conscious mind here is the part of our mind where we gather information and knowledge. It's where we store all of our information that we learn through school, through education, throughout our life. It's our thinking and it's our thinking and knowing mind. The subconscious mind is the doing part of our mind. It's the part of our mind that governs our habits and our behavior, which in turn governs our results on the outside. This is what we call the emotional mind. So this is the knowing and the intellect, the top half. The bottom half is almost like the doing and the emotional. Don't worry if you can't see this too clearly, because I will email you this diagram after our call. Now you see these 5 little hairs that I was talking about here, these 5 antennae. Well, this represents hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. These are what we call our 5 senses. And the reason these antennae, these 5 little hairs as I call them, are standing on top of the head here is because these are hardwired into our conscious mind, into the top half of our mind, the conscious mind. These are our 5 sensory factors. And a lot of people just live by these 5 sensory factors alone. You see, these senses enable us to gather all the information that we store into our conscious mind. We gather all of this information, and people live by these 5 senses alone. And all of this information that we've gathered through the 5 senses gets suppressed into the conscious mind, the top half of our mind, the knowing, the intellect part of our mind. The conscious mind then suppresses all of this information, almost in a downwards motion, into our subconscious mind. Well, how does that happen? Well, through a repetitive formula or repeated pattern of behavior. This conscious mind impresses all of this information into our subconscious mind through a repetitive formula and a repeated pattern of behavior. But to change our doing, to change our habits and behavior, which is ultimately what's causing our results, we need to implement new behavior, new patterns, new habits. We don't just replace the bad habits with new habits. We actually need to create and develop new habits. Now, for me, to try and improve my results on the outside and change my subconscious thinking and my doing and my emotional mind, the formula that I've implemented, and I'm doing this right now, is affirmations. I've introduced affirmations into my life, and currently I am on day 28 of writing down every single day 2 pages worth of the same affirmation. So I'm just writing one positive affirmation every day in my journal, and I'm making sure that I complete 2 pages. And I will not go to bed that night until I have done my 2 pages worth of affirmations. I'm trying to get into a habit of doing it at the same time every day, but I appreciate that's not always easy, but still I will not go to bed until my 2 pages have been done in that day. And I'm currently on day 28. So by creating and making sure that I'm writing these affirmations down every day, I'm creating and developing a new pattern of behavior for me. And actually, this is strengthening my resolve. This is strengthening my will, which is one of the 6 higher faculties, one of the 6 mental faculties that we are going to learn about in lesson 5. Our will gives us the ability to hold a picture on the screen of our mind to the exclusion of all distractions. It helps us to develop our focus and concentration. Now, we'll talk more about the mental faculties, the higher faculties in lesson 5. But PGI offers a fantastic program called Magic in Your Mind, which focuses on these 6 faculties. I'm currently on day 23 of a 6-week program, and each week focuses on one mental faculty, one of the topics. I'm currently studying the power of imagination, and it's a wonderful program to help you understand the power and the importance of developing these higher faculties. And it's going to be a great lesson and a great learning tool for you as we move into lesson 5. So if you're keen to find out more about Magic in Your Mind, please send me an email after this call and I can arrange this program for you. Now, I appreciate the stick person has been a lot of information for you, and I suggest that you replay Bob's video and perhaps re-watch this call today, which will be on my site. Watch it as many times as you can in your own time and get a really deep understanding of the stick person and how it operates. As I say, a copy of the stick person, my illustration, will be available on the site, and I will also give you some my script from today's facilitation, if that will help you with some of my detailed notes. So please feel free to have a look on my website for that information. If you've any questions after this call, please stay on the line after this lesson and I'm available to have a chat. Now, as always, it's been a pleasure facilitating this lesson for you. I hope that you have found the information really powerful. I know that I always do every time I go through this information and through these lessons of thinking into results. Make sure you complete the workshops, which we will go over in lesson 5. The workshops are really instrumental in developing an understanding for you. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.